Shalom, beloveds of the King. Here we are once again coming together to be able to look at our prophetic book of Yeshayahu. And today we are going to look at Isaiah chapter 35, which is really looking into the future glory of Zion. And it's really about the redeemed of the Father. Those that of the joy of the redeemed, because it's the redeemed that are going to have the joy. And it is the redeemed that are going to be able to be part of the glory of Zion. Let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to praise and thank you for this time. I thank you for this powerful, powerful chapter. You are so amazing, Father, because you will never be able to give us a chapter just like you've given us this chapter 34 that was just destruction and so much blood and so much calamity, where we really see what is going to be in the end days. But really, for us to understand, for those that are opposed to you, for those that are your enemies, how you are going to come and bring destruction upon the earth. But then you bring Isaiah chapter 35, where from here you are going to speak the blessing, and you are going to reveal the blessing for the redeemed, for those that are faithful, for those that follow you, for the faithful remnant that truly is sold out to following the Lamb wherever he goes. And so, Father, I just want to thank you because you are so faithful, Father. You are not a Yah that is only of doom and gloom, because you bring your promises. And we have your promises to stand on because you are a just Yah. You are righteous, you are just, but you are merciful and you are kind. And therefore you will reveal yourself through the pages of this prophetic book, not only in the judgments that you're going to bring upon the earth, but Yeshayahu sees this powerful prophetic vision constantly of the glory that is going to come to those that will follow the Lamb wherever he goes, to those that have chosen to follow your ways, to the faithful remnant. You show yourself faithful. And so I praise and I thank you, Abba Yahuwah, that you will come and that you will open up this powerful prophecy to us so that we may hold on to this powerful word, and being able to understand the depth of this word, that you will come and take us deeper, that you will come and speak to my mind and speak through my lips the very oracles that will come from your heart. Open up your scriptures to us, Father, that we may be able to see the deeper revelation of that which you want to show us, in Yeshua's name. Amen. So praise Abba, Father. We're looking at Isaiah chapter 35. Let us read. Let the wilderness and the dry place be glad for them, and let the desert rejoice and blossom as the rose. And it says, it blossoms much and rejoices, even with joy and singing. The esteem of Lebanon shall be given to it. The excellence of Carmel and Sharon, they shall see the esteem of Yahuwah, the excellency of our Eloah. And so the wilderness, this wilderness that is normally so dry, this wilderness that has got, I know we lived in the wilderness when I was in Israel. We lived there for 2 years, and we were in Arad, a place called Arad, which is a little town, 26,000 people in the wilderness, just up from the Dead Sea. And this was a town that was so beautiful. It was the prophetic utterance, because this was the very prophetic word that the Father had given me, Isaiah 35, as we were praying and as I was asking the Father where he wanted me to stay. And he had given me Isaiah 35 about the wilderness and how the wilderness would blossom like the rose. And in this town, it had so many rose bushes. In the middle of the islands, there's rose bushes and so many rose bushes. And so it was just like the promise of what is spoken over here, where he is the rose of Sharon, and how the desert would blossom like the rose. And if we have a look at Isaiah chapter 40, verses 5, in Isaiah chapter 40, it says, "And the esteem of Yahuwah shall be revealed, and all flesh together shall see it, for the mouth of Yahuwah has spoken." And so they shall see the glory of Yahuwah, the excellency of our Eloah. When they look into these places, these cities in the desert. I mean, if you take a city like Beersheba, it is a huge city in the desert, in the middle of the desert, and it is blooming, and it is massive, a massive, massive city. And it is flourishing. And there's so many places in the desert where they have cultivated agriculture and everything in the desert. So the desert is certainly blooming. It is certainly blooming. And it will blossom as the rose. And there is rejoicing that takes place. And there are feasts and everything taking place in the wilderness, in Eretz Israel. Right now, this is a city that is absolutely, there's cities in the desert that are blooming for the Father. And so strengthen the weak hands and make firm the weak knees. So yeah, we see, because of the promise, because of what we see going on around us, because of the promise that the Father has spoken, the promise that He has declared, we are to strengthen those that are weak, the weak hands, and make firm the weak knees. So there's no time to be weak. There is no time to be able to have weak hands and weak knees, because we are to be strengthened and we are to be encouraged in what the Father is going to do. And so let this be a promise for you today, that even in the days ahead, in the times that we're going to go into, and where there is great darkness upon the earth, and there will be pestilence, and there will be disease, and there will be wars and rumors of wars, and all these things that are going on around us, be strengthened. Understand that we are to be strengthened, that there is no time for us to be able to be weak in this time. We are to be able to be strengthened. We are to be strong, and we are to be courageous. Verse 4 says, "Say to those with anxious heart, be strong, do not fear. See, your Eloah comes with vengeance, with the recompense of Eloah. He is coming to save you." What a powerful promise. That's why I say Isaiah 35 has got such promises in there. It's telling us that we need to be strong. We need to be able to be courageous. So yes, chasak. So say to those with anxious hearts, say to those that are fearful of heart, be strong, chazak, be courageous, be firm, be secure, be strengthened. That is the word, chazak. It's to be strong, to be courageous. Chazak, strong and courageous. It's the same word. Chazak. Be strong and be courageous. Do not fear. See, your Eloah comes with vengeance and with His recompense. He's coming to bring retribution. He's coming to bring retribution. Remember that the enemy is only going to get away with this. Remember, when he hands over things to the enemy, he's got only but a short period of time. Remember, in Revelation chapter 12, it says he is thrown out from heaven onto the earth. There is a war that is going on in the heavenlies, and then they are cast down. onto the earth. And so he gives him a period of time. And so he says that he will bring retribution, and he will come to save you. He will come to save us out of that place where we will be crying out to him, where we are in this terrible time of when great destruction will be around us. He will come and save us. And what does he expect of us? To be strong, to be courageous. Chazak, chazak. That's what we need to be. So in Hebrews chapter 12, let's have a look at Hebrews. In Hebrews chapter 12, from verses 11 to 14, now listen to what he says. And indeed, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but grievous. But afterwards, it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. So understand, at the time when the Father is bringing chastisement and he's bringing discipline and he's bringing correction to his people, it doesn't seem pleasant at the time. But listen to verse 12. So strengthen the hands which hang down and weak knees. So strengthen those hands and the weak knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest the lame be turned aside, but instead to be healed. Now listen to what verse 14 says, because verse 14 is very important for the rest of the chapter. And it says, pursue peace with all, and pursue set apartness, without which no one shall see the Master. So if we are not set apart, we are not going to see the Master. And this is going to be what we are going to look at as we continue to see our prophetic book that we are looking at over here. And now we continue to read verses 5, and we continue to read. And it says, then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf be opened. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing, because waters shall burst forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. And the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water in the home of jackals, where each lay grass with reeds and rushes. So we see that then the eyes of the blind, those who were spiritually blind. So yes, Yeshua came to open the eyes of many that were physically blind, but he also came to open the eyes of those who were spiritually blind. And he came to open the ears of those that were deaf, the same as he opened the ears for those that were spiritually deaf that needed to hear. That's why Isaiah is one of the prophets that keeps making mention of being able to see and being able to hear. And we have a look at Isaiah chapter 6 verses 9. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 6, which we covered a little while ago. But in Isaiah chapter 6 verses 9, listen to what he says. And he says, go, and you shall say to this people, hearing you hear, but do not understand. And seeing you see, but you do not know. So you see, now, this is what he had to go and say to this people. But now, those that are being redeemed, these chosen people, these people that is going to be on this highway, he's saying that they are going to have eyes to see and they're going to have ears to hear. Because hearing, these people were hearing, yet they were hearing, but they had no understanding. So there's nothing worse than when someone is able to hear a word, but they cannot receive it with the understanding. So there's nothing worse than when we are spiritually closed, eyes closed, ears closed, that we will read this word and this word is not alive to us because we are dead in our transgressions and dead in our sinful ways and dead in our religious ways, and therefore we cannot discern the truth of the Father's word. And so he says, hearing you hear, but do not understand, and seeing you see, but you do not know. Seeing you see, but you do not know. And you see, that word know is the word yada, for to perceive, recognize, understand, and become acquainted with him as a husband and a wife in intimacy. So understand, they are seeing, but they don't have intimacy with him. They are hearing, but they have no understanding. Now he's saying to these that they will have eyes, the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf will see. And so we must understand that they have ears, but they couldn't understand. Now they will have the understanding of the revelation and will have eyes to know him, to perceive, to recognize, understand, to be acquainted with him as like a husband and a wife in intimacy. And then he speaks about the waters, that there will be waters, and because waters shall burst forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert, and the parched ground shall become a pool. So this parched ground of this desert shall become a pool. And that is why you see these palm trees, a lot of palm trees in the desert, in the wilderness in Israel. And they around them, there will be like these pools of water. And so there's these pools that form. And the thirsty land, springs of water in the home of jackals, where each lay grass with reeds and rushes. So if we have a look at a promise, there is a promise in Isaiah chapter 43. What a beautiful promise in Isaiah 43, one of my favorite scriptures. And literally, this is starting to take place in terms of rivers of living water that are going to flow through the wilderness. Because even in 2019, there was a brand new river that they discovered. One of, there was one of these tourists that were, they were in the wilderness, and the next minute, this brand new river was gushing forth with this beautiful, crystal clear blue water that was gushing through the desert. And this scripture was literally coming to pass, which means if this part of the scripture comes to pass, so will the rest. So let's read from Isaiah 43 verses 18. Do not remember the former events, nor consider the events of old. So isn't that what we do? We reminisce on the past, and we focus on the past, and so much of what we go through is about the past, and we are forever focusing on what is going on in the past, when at the end of the day, we should be looking to the future. You cannot ride a car. You cannot drive a car looking in a rearview mirror. When you drive a car, you're looking ahead of you. You only for a little few seconds, you look in the rearview mirror to see what is behind you. You look to the side mirrors to see what is on the sides of you, but you do not drive constantly looking in the rearview mirror, or else you're going to crash. And this is what people do not understand. If they keep looking at what should have been and what would have been and how it would have been and why and why and why and keep going on about the past and the past and the past, you cannot move forward and you will crash. You need to allow the Father to come and bring healing and deliverance to the past things, and you need to start focusing on the future and on where He's taking you, looking in your mirror, not looking in your rearview mirror, but looking through your windscreen ahead of you. And so He says, see, I'm doing what is new. That's why the Father says, don't look behind you, because I'm doing what is new. Let it now spring forth. Do you not know it? I am even making a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And so we have seen this come to pass, where the Father is definitely making rivers in the desert. There's rivers of living water that are starting to flow through the desert. Now listen to what He says. The beast of the field esteems me. the jackals and the ostriches, because I have given waters in the wilderness and rivers in the desert to give drink to my people, my chosen. Now, isn't this exactly what he was saying of here when he says, and the parched ground shall become a pool, and the thirsty land springs of water, and the home for jackals, where each lay grass with reeds and rushes. So they are going to come and drink, these jackals and these animals and these ostriches, because I have given waters in the wilderness and rivers in the desert to give drink to my people. Now listen to what he says clearly there. My people, my chosen. So who is going to drink in this wilderness? Who is going to have the water to drink in the wilderness? His people, his chosen. This people, listen to this prophetic word in verse 21. This people I have formed for myself. Let them relate my praise. So they are those that are going to come praising, leaping for joy, which is what was spoken of right in the beginning. They're going to sing songs. They're going to have joy. And these are his people that he has formed for himself, and they will relate his praise. So there is a people that he has set apart, that he has chosen for himself, and these people shall come forth at the appointed time. And when we get to Isaiah chapter 43, we will go deep into that. So we now read verse 8. And there shall be a highway and a way, and it shall be called the way of set apartness. The unclean does not pass over it, but it is for those who walk the way, and no fools wander on it. Now we're going to need to break this verse down, because just in this verse, there is a wealth of revelation that is being given to us in this time. So the first thing we see is that there is a highway. And this highway is the way, and it is called the way of set apartness, the way of holiness. Now, you know, in the other Bibles, when they use holiness, holiness does not really give you the same understanding as when you hear the word set apartness, when you think of to be set apart. To be holy is one thing, but when we think of the word set apartness, what is this word? So it is the way of set apartness, and that way of set apartness is the word kadosh, kadesh, kadesh, H6944. And this is apartness, this is holiness, sacredness, dedicated, consecrated. And the origin comes from kadash. And this word kadash means to consecrate, to sanctify, dedicate, separate, to be set apart, to be consecrated, to observe as holy, to keep oneself apart, to separate, to purify, to be clean, modest, pure, and innocent. So to be set apart unto Yahuwah, it means to be set apart unto Yahuwah. And so this being set apart, it means to be set apart from all else and dedicated to Yahuwah's use. What is set apart to Yahuwah is not contaminated by the corruption of the world. So to be set apart unto Yahuwah means you love him above everything else. You do not love the world and love the things of the world and want to follow the ways of the world. You love him, you are set apart unto him, and you are totally set apart from these things where you have no love for the world and the things of the world. It is wholly set apart unto him in purity. We will be morally good and walk in righteousness. And this is if we have a look at Psalm 77 verse 13. So let's go look at Psalm 77 verse 13. Your way, O Allure, is set apartness. So you see, Abba Yahuwah's way is set apartness, which is exactly what he says, which is the way. The way that this highway is a highway of set apartness. And your way, O Allure, is in set apartness. So his way is in set apartness. So we go have a look at, then there is, you know that Proverbs, there's a word in Proverbs that says, there is a way that seems right unto man. So in Proverbs verses 14, this is what it says, because you see, there is a way. This is the way. It's the way of set apartness. But people want to go their own way. And people think that every way is the Father's way. So it's like all roads lead to Rome. And so we think that all ways are just going to lead back to the Father. No. There is a way. And today we are going to understand the way of set apartness. And what is set apart unto the Father, and what is clean unto the Father is not what is unclean in every way that goes, and there's no mixed seed on this highway. And so listen to what it says in Proverbs 14 verse 12, and it says, there is a way which seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. So do you see, there is a way that all these religious people will go on a way that seems right to them. But yet, its way is the way to death. Its end is the way to death. And so he says, even in laughter, the heart is in pain, and the end of that joy is heaviness. The backslider in heart is satisfied with his own ways. So do you see? The backslider, the one who doesn't truly follow the ways of the Father, he is backslidden. He's not fervent. He's not hot. He's not on fire for the Father. He's the lukewarm that he says is going to spew him out of his mouth. He is the one that is lukewarm. He's the backslider, which he's going to spew out of his mouth. And he says he is satisfied in heart. The backslider in heart is satisfied with his own way. And so we must understand the Father doesn't want us to go our own way. Look at verse 15. The simple believes every word, but the clever one watches his step. The wise fears and turns away from evil. So do you see the wise virgins, they will turn away from evil and they will follow the way of set apartness. The wise virgins follow the way of set apartness. So if we have a look at Matthew chapter 7, let's go look at Matthew chapter 7. In Matthew chapter 7 from verses 13 to 14, he says, enter through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad. So you see, there is a broad way and there is a narrow way. And the broad way that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter in through it. So you see, please do not be eluded in thinking that there is the many that is going to go on this highway. This is a highway of a set apartness, which is only few that are going to find it, because this is exactly what a remnant is. A remnant is made up of a few. And he says, because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed. You see, that hard pressed is the word for thlipsis, which is the way of tribulation, which is the way of persecution, which many people are not going to want to receive in their lives, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. So understand, this hard pressed is the word for affliction. They are afflicted. They are persecuted. They are hard pressed. They're going through trial and tribulation. And so there are, because of this, these are those that might be dying as martyrs, which leads to life. And there are few who find it. So make note, There are few find it. So on this highway, it's not a highway of many. See, the broad way that leads to destruction, there are many that are going to go on that way. Remember, how many came out of the land of Egypt? Mitzrayim. How many? There could have been 2 million, 3 million. Out of all of those, two out of the original ones that came out made the promised land. Yehoshua, and Joshua and Caleb. They were the only two that entered into the promised land, because they were not looking at the giants. They had faith. They were looking at the Father, and they had faith in His word, and they had faith in Him. But yet, the others did not enter in the world the way it was before the flood. How many millions could there have been upon the earth? 8 were saved out of that millions. But then we always think that it is the many. It is the few. And the Bible speaks few. And when it says few, it means it's a remnant. So then we have a look at John chapter 14, verses 6. Let's look at John chapter 14, verses 6. In John chapter 14, verse 6 says, Yeshua said to him, I am the way, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So understand, Yeshua is speaking. He is the way. So He's the door to the way. He is the truth. So we need to come into fullness of truth. And He is the life. And no one is going to come to the Father except through me. And yet these people are thinking that they can enter in through their own righteousness. Yet Yeshua clearly spoke and said, He is the only way. There is one shepherd at a sheep gate, and He is the shepherd at the sheep gate. You cannot come in through the side gate. You cannot come in through the back gate. You have to come through the sheep gate. You have to come through His gate. You have to come through Him. There isn't another gate. He is the entrance to that tabernacle. There isn't another way to enter through the tabernacle. You have to enter through Him. He's the one who made a way for us to be able to enter through that gate into the tabernacle. So, if we have a look and we see, He says, I am the way, I am truth. So He says, I am the way and the truth and the life. So if we look at a tabernacle, this is the way that the Father explained to me. It's the best way that I can explain to you about life. When He talks about narrow is the path, that the way that leads to life, and few find it. Because listen, He is the way. That's the outer court. He's the way. He's the way that opened the door for us to be able to enter into the tabernacle. And Yahushua becomes He becomes the ultimate lamb that is going to be sacrificed on an altar. And He was the way. That is the Passover. When we come to the brazen altar, the minute you come in through the tabernacle, the very first piece of furniture you're going to find in this tabernacle grounds is a brazen altar. And you need to come to a brazen altar and lay your life down, just as He was the way that came to lay His life down. Then you're going to go through a brazen laver. So then you're going to be washed, and we are being washed, and that is part of the baptism, where we will receive the baptism of the Ruach, and we receive the baptism of the fire of Yahuwah, and then we enter into the holy place. The holy place is when you're now going to have the altar you're going to have the table of showbread, you're going to have the menorah making up the 7 spirits of Yahuwah. So we are to be filled with the spirit of Yahuwah that comes with the 7 spirits. So we've got the spirit of might, the spirit of counsel, the spirit of the fear of Yahuwah. all 7 spirits. And then you got the table of showbread. So we are going to be able to eat the word, and we are going to meditate on the word, and the word is going to continue to work in us and change us. That is the holy place. That's the truth. This is now when we are walking in spirit and truth. In the holy place is the place of spirit and truth. You got the menorah, you got the table of showbread, you got spirit and you've got truth. The truth of his word, because without the truth of his word, we cannot be set apart. We are to be set apart in the truth of his word. It's the truth of his word that sets us apart. When we will humble ourselves and walk out his truths. And then, once we're walking in spirit and in truth, we then become a living sacrifice for him. So that coal of fire, remember, the priest would have to take the coals from the brazen altar outside, and then he will bring those coals and put it on the altar of incense. So then you become a sweet smelling incense to the Father, and then he carries you and he brings you into the Holy of Holies, which is the life. So now listen. I am the way, outer courts, which is the Passover, everything to do with Passover. I am the truth, which is everything to do with when we received the Ruach of Yahuwah, when we received at Shavuot. I am the truth. I am the life, Holy of Holies. That is now when we will be able to reside in the last 3 feasts, which is then going to be when Yahushua comes, and we will come and tabernacle with Yahushua. And that is the life. So the Father is wanting to bring us back into the life, which is the Holy of Holies, where we will dwell with him. Now he says, narrow is the path, narrow is the way that leads to life, the Holy of Holies, and few will find it. Why? Because outer court was salvation. Holy place. When we come into the holy place, where the menorah, where the table of showbread, where the altar of incense, that's sanctification. We are being set apart. We are being sanctified. And then in the Holy of Holies is glorification, where we will then receive that glory that only comes from him. And that is the life that we are called to live in. So that is why he is saying that if we go back, let's go back again to our Isaiah. Let's go back to Isaiah. And it says in Isaiah chapter 35, and he says, and there shall be a highway and a way, and it shall be called the way of set apartness. You see, there isn't another way. You need to go through the sanctification process because you received salvation. Salvation was a free gift, but now you need to go through the sanctification of the set apartness. That is the sanctification. That is where you're going to have to be sanctified. You're going to have to be consecrated. You're going to have to be separated. You're going to have to be set apart. You are going to have to be able to separate. You're going to have to purify. You're going to have to clean. You're going to be modest. You're going to be pure. You're going to be innocent. That is everything that you go through because you receive the 7 spirits of Yahuwah. It's spirit and truth. So spirit, the menorah, the light, everything that comes to light within you, that is the spirit of Yahuwah. So you'll be guided by his Ruach HaKodesh. And then you've got the table of showbread, which is the truth of his word. And he is setting you apart in the truth. And that is the sanctification. Then we will be set apart in the holy place with the sanctification. And then you offer him incense. Your life becomes a sweet smelling incense to the Father. And then he picks you up and he uses you to become his priest in the Holy of Holies, where you will then minister unto him. And then he speaks, because the holy place, the Holy of Holies, is called the speaking place. And then he comes and he speaks between the cherubim, and he wants to speak to you and he wants to reveal himself to you. And so then he talks and he says, and the unclean does not pass over it. The unclean. So you get clean and unclean. So what is the word unclean? The word unclean is H2931, which is the word tamei. You get tahor and tamei. Clean is tahor and tamei is unclean. So what is the unclean? The word unclean means defiled. It means polluted. It means impure. It means to become unclean, ceremonially unclean, sexually unclean, and religiously unclean. So understand, we can become unclean through our religious practices. So if we are religious in our ways, we will not be keeping the ways of the Father, and therefore we will become religiously unclean. To pronounce unclean, ceremonially unclean, to be unclean. Now listen to what was written there. To be unclean is to profane Yahuwah's name. Wow. So when I saw this, my eyes went big and I said, Father, why have I not seen this before? So under Tamei, when he talks that something is unclean, the unclean are not going to walk there. Those who profane Yahuwah's name, what does it mean to profane? The word profane is H2490, which is halal. That is the word profane. Now, to profane means to wound, to dissolve, to pollute, to defile, to violate, to make common. What does it mean to profane? To profane means to dissolve. It means it is no longer looks like the original. So it no longer looks like the original. It is like if you put sugar or salt in water, it dissolves and it alters the taste. It is not the same taste. It's either going to be a sweet taste or a salty taste. Now, water is not what it was. It's altered it. And that is what we did with Abba Yahuwah's name. We made it common, like we use Lord and God being used for people. Lord gets used for people, and God gets used for other deities, and Lord gets used for Lord so-and-so, and Lord gets used as my Baal and Adonai, and all these words that we use, that we profane his name. It means you're removing the essence, you are dissolving what his name actually is, so that it doesn't look like the same. So if his name is Yahuwah, and if we call him, when we call him God, we say Alua, which means mighty one, mighty Al, and we say Alua, now we will use Lord and God, and therefore we profane his name. We are taking the essence of it away, because we are taking what it ultimately means. And so we have a look at Ezekiel chapter 36. Let's look at Ezekiel. In Ezekiel chapter 36, Ezekiel 36, 20 to 23. So in Ezekiel 26, 20 to 23, they came to the nations wherever they went, and they profaned my set-apart name. For it was said of them, these are the people of Yahuwah, and yet they have gone out of the land, out of his land. But I had compassion on my set-apart name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the nations wherever they went. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus said the Master Yahuwah, I do not do this for your sake, O house of Israel, but for my set-apart name's sake, which you have profaned among the nations wherever you went. So you see, they dissolved his name, so that which should have, what the people saw to the name that he was, the way that they behaved and in what they were doing, they were bringing his name and they were dissolving the power and the authority of that name. And I shall set apart my great name. So you see, what is the Father doing right now? Because his name has been dissolved, what does he say? I am going to set apart my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, which you have profaned in their midst. And the nations shall know that I am Yahuwah. The nations shall know that his name is Yahuwah, declares the Master Yahuwah, when I am set apart in you before their eyes. So you see, he's going to be set apart before the eyes of the people, and he's going to restore his name, Yahuwah. And who are the people? These people that are clean. Because understand, no unclean thing is going to be on this highway. These people on this highway, they will be those that will not be unclean. Therefore, they will not profane his name. So if we go look at John chapter 17. Let's go look at John chapter 17. John chapter 17, verses 6, we read, I have revealed your name to the men whom you gave me out of the world. They were yours and you gave them to me, and they have guarded your word. So there you go. He revealed his name to the people. Then, verse 11 says, and I am no more in the world, but these are in the world, and I come to you. Set apart, Father, guard them in your name, which you have given me, so that they might be one as we are one. So you see, we will be one when we are set apart in his name. So, let's look at verse 17. Set them apart in your truth. So you see, we need to be set apart in what? Set apart in truth. Set them apart in your truth. Your word is truth. So he's setting them apart. He's going to set apart a people in truth because his word is truth. Remember what I said. I am the way, I am the truth. Truth is the sanctification. That is where we're being set apart so that we can come into the life, which is the Holy of Holies, which is where we receive his glory, glorification. Then verses 19, and for them I set myself apart so that they too might be set apart in truth. So there we go. And then we have a look and we see unclean. What does it mean, clean and unclean? Let's go look at what does he see as unclean. So if he says, no one that is unclean shall enter. So let's go look again at Isaiah. It says, and the unclean does not pass over it. So what does he see as being clean? We are being set apart because he says that the way that we are to enter is set apartness. So there's no set apartness without the truth. We need to be set apart in truth. And we have come to understand that to profane his name means that is what it means to be unclean, is to profane his name. And now we look at other examples of unclean. So let's go look at Deuteronomy chapter 14. Deuteronomy chapter 14 verses 2 to 3. Deuteronomy chapter 14 says, you are the children of Yahuwah, your Eluah. Do not cut yourselves and shave the front of your heads for the dead. Then look at verse 2. For you are a set apart people to Yahuwah, your Eluah. And Yahuwah has chosen you to be a people for himself. So listen. For you are a set apart people. So you are a set apart people to Yahuwah, your Eluah. And Yahuwah has chosen you to be a people for himself, a treasured possession. What we saw in Isaiah chapter 43, he has a people that are his chosen treasured possession. A treasured possession above all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. Now listen to what he says. Verse 3 is the key. Do not eat whatever is abominable. So now he starts to give you the whole list that goes right down until we get to be able to get to this at the end of this chapter. And so he says, for you to eat clean and unclean animals. He tells you what is clean. He tells you what is unclean. And therefore he will tell you what animals are clean that you should eat and what animals are unclean that you shouldn't eat. The same as in Leviticus chapter 11. You can go to Leviticus chapter 11 and you'll have your whole list there of food you should eat, food you shouldn't eat, what is clean and what is unclean, what is tameh and what is tahor, and you need to decide, are you going to be able to be one that is going to be clean? Because if you're clean, you're not going to eat anything that he says is unclean. And that is what's going to make us clean. Then we have a look again at what he says is clean. So what he says is unclean. So we go to Leviticus chapter 10. And so we go to Leviticus chapter 10. And in Leviticus chapter 10, we go to verse 9. Leviticus chapter 10, verse 9. And it says, verse 8, it says, and Yahuwah spoke to Aaron, saying, do not drink wine or strong drink. Okay, so he's telling you, you are not to drink wine, you are not to drink strong drink. You nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of appointment, lest you die, a law forever throughout your generations. Because what had happened to Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, they had gone and offered him strange fire. So look at what happened. And Nadab and Abihu, sons of Aaron, each took his fire holder and put fire in it and put incense on it and brought strange fire before Yahuwah, which he had not commanded them. So then he starts to tell them, so they die, the sons of Aaron die, he's not even allowed to mourn them, and then this is the very next thing that he says to them. Do not drink wine or strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tent of appointment, lest you die, a law forever throughout your generations. Now listen to what he says in verse 10, and this is the key. To make a distinction between the set apart and the profane, between the unclean and the clean. So he sees wine and strong drink as unclean. And to teach the children of Israel all the laws which Yahuwah has spoken to them by the hand of Moshe. Now understand something. If you want to be one that still wants to drink wine and drink strong drink, you will reside in the outer court. But you may not come into the holy place, which is now entering into the tabernacle, because when you enter into that tabernacle, you may not enter in if you have drank wine and strong drink. You must decide who you want to be. Because if you want to be a priest, you may not drink wine or strong drink, because this was for the priests that were going to enter into the tabernacle. Then he says to make a distinguish between what is profane and what is set apart, and between what is unclean and clean. So he calls that unclean. Then he says, and to teach the children of Israel all the laws which Yahuwah has spoken to them by the hand of Moshe. Now you will say to me, yes, but you know what? That was for the priests then. That is not for us now. Okay, then let's go to 2 Corinthians, let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. Let's start at 1 Corinthians. We go to 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and we are going to look at verses 19 to 20. Or do you not know? Okay, so he didn't want it in the tabernacle. He didn't want wine and strong drink in his tabernacle. Therefore, he's not going to want it in our tabernacle. So listen to what he says. Do you not know that your body is the dwelling place of the set apart Ruach, who is in you, which you have from Eloah, and you are not your own. Do you understand? You've been bought with a price. You are not your own. And if you are a body that wants to be able to carry his presence, then you are not going to be able to be putting drink and strong drink, because he did not want it in his tabernacle. So why should he want it in yours? For you were bought with a price. Therefore, esteem Eloah in your body and in your spirit, which are of Eloah. Praise Abba. Then we go look at 2 Corinthians. Now we go to 2 Corinthians from verse 14. Do not become unevenly yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership have righteousness and lawlessness? So do you see, how do we continue to want to have partnership with those that are completely lawless and those that do not keep the ways of the Father? So how do we continue to stay in churches where people are completely lawless, but we will go to these churches and we want to sit in the churches and fellowship with people that do not keep the Father's laws and do not keep the Father's ways? You have nothing in common with those people. That's why the minute you want to be able to walk in the Father's ways, they will persecute you. And what fellowship has light with darkness? And what agreement has Messiah with Belial? Or what part does a believer have with an unbeliever? And what union has the dwelling place of Eloah with idols? For you are a dwelling place of the living Eloah. As Eloah has said, I shall dwell in them and walk among them, and I shall be their Eloah, and they shall be my people. Now listen to what he says in verse 17. Therefore, come out from among them and be separate, says Yahuwah, and do not touch what is unclean, and I shall receive you. So you see, that which he says is unclean, don't touch it, don't bring it into your body. And I shall be a father to you, and you shall be sons and daughters to me, says Yahuwah the Almighty. Having then these promises, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all defilement of the flesh and spirit, perfecting set apartness in the fear of Yahuwah. So you see, the only way that we're going to perfect set apartness is the more of the fear of Yahuwah that we are going to have upon us. So we must understand that this is a way, that there is a way that seems right unto man, but its way is going to land up in death, because many want to walk the broad path. And that's why many are going to go into destruction. And so now we continue to read, and it says, the unclean does not pass over it, but it is for those who walk in the way, and no fools wander on it. So guess what? The foolish virgins, the 5 foolish virgins, that's why they are not part of those that are set apart unto the Father. They had oil in their lamps, but they let the oil go out. They were about their own business, about their own way. They were doing their own thing. They were not following his ways. They were not filling up their lamps with the oil, which is go buy the oil, which means that you are going to be able to fill yourself up with the oil which comes with a price, because how do you get that anointing oil? You are going to have to go through the olive press. The olive tree needs to be shaken. The olive tree needs to be beaten. The olives need to fall to the ground, and then it's got to go through an olive press. So that's why I cannot give you my oil, because I have had to pay with my oil. I've had to pay for it with a price. It's cost me a price. So it will cost you a price to be able to walk out this path. The narrow path is a path that is hard pressed. It is affliction. It is the word thlipsis. It takes affliction and persecution and hardships and trials. And therefore, no one can walk that out for you. You are the one that's going to walk it out for yourself. And so then he says, no lion is there, nor any ravenous beast. Go up on it. It shall not be found there, but the redeemed shall walk there. So who are these redeemed? The redeemed shall walk there. So if we go look at Revelation let's go to Revelation. Who are these redeemed? So we go to Revelation chapter 14. Now in Revelation chapter 14, let's go see what it says. The redeemed shall be there. And he says, they are those who are not defiled with woman, for they are the maidens. They are those following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. So you see, do you follow the Lamb wherever he goes? Because there's only a way, and the way is of the Lamb. And he says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. They were redeemed from among men, being first fruits of Eloah to the Lamb. So you see, they were redeemed from the earth. They were taken from the earth. They were the ones that he went and fetched from the earth. Not a rapture. They are redeemed. And in their mouth was found no falsehood. Do you see why you got to clean up your profane mouth? Your profane lips? You can't keep speaking the things that is profane before the Father. You can't keep speaking his name to be Lord God and Jesus and Adonai and Hashem. That is not his name. We are to call him by his name. Yes, he is Abba. He's our Father. But his name is Yahuwah. And in their mouth was found no falsehood, for they are blameless before the throne of Eloah. And so now we read, and we come finishing off with Isaiah chapter 35 verses 10, and it says, and the ransomed of Yahuwah shall return and enter Zion with singing, with everlasting joy on their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So these are the ransomed of Yahuwah. What is the ransomed of Yahuwah? These are the redeemed of the earth. They are once again those that have been redeemed. So that word ransomed is the word redeemed. And they are the ones that have been redeemed from the earth. They are the ones that have been set apart. They enter Zion with singing and everlasting joy on their heads. On their heads is singing and everlasting joy. So now we go back to Revelation chapter 14 and we read again the scripture in context starting at verse 1. And it says, and I looked and I saw a lamb, and standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name. They were sealed in his name. Remember what he said in John chapter 17, Father, seal them in your name. Having the Father's name written upon their forehead, so they were sealed with his name. And I heard a voice out of the heaven, like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of loud thunder. And I heard the sound of the harpists playing their harps. And they sang a renewed song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders, and no one was able to learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. So you see, those are those that were ransomed, redeemed. They are those who were not defiled with woman, for they are maidens. They are those following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. They were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to Eloah. They were being redeemed and brought to Mount Zion, which is exactly what this says, that they are going to be ransomed and they're going to be brought to Mount Zion, and there's going to be joy and laughter. And they were ransomed from among men, being first fruits to Eloah and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no falsehood, for they are blameless before the throne of Eloah. And so praise Abba Yahuwah that this is the people that he's going to ransom. But what is the key? Let's read the key again. And the key is again where he talks about the way is the way of set apartness, and we need to pursue the way of set apartness. And here it says again in Hebrews chapter 12 verses 14, pursue peace with all and pursue apartness. So you are to pursue it. You are to strive for it, without which no one shall see the Master. Do you see? No one is going to see the Master if they have not pursued set apartness, if they are not set apart before the Father. So understand, this is not about your way or my way. This is about His way, and His highway is the highway of set apartness, and it is a highway that nothing that is unclean will be on this highway. So we cannot put ourselves in this category if we are not willing to stick to the criteria that goes with this chapter. So if you want to be part of the redeemed, then you need to be able to walk what it says. May Abba bless you all. Shalom, shalom.